Hello again, everybody. Recently, I scrolled through one of my old Lightroom catalogs and I realized that my photography has changed. Not so much in what I shoot or the way I edit, well, to some degree the way I edit, but mostly in the way I use aperture. And back then, like 3 years ago, I used to shoot everything wide open. And this is really not something I would still do today. And don't get me wrong, there is good reasons to shoot wide open. Let's say, for instance, you shoot portraits and it's really all about the person in the frame, or you shoot little details and you really want to separate that detail from the noise in your frame. Sure, shoot wide open. Or if you shoot at night, for instance, you just want to maximize light gathering capabilities and getting the cleanest shots. And in this video, I'm going to give you 4 reasons why you should not shoot wide open. And if you stay tuned till the end, I will show you how this realization of not relying to a wide open aperture anymore has actually revolutionized my photography, the way I shoot, what I shoot, and on what camera and lens I shoot. And with that being said, let's get into the video. Alright, so the first reason why you should not shoot wide open is because your scene lacks context. Today I scroll through many of my photos that I've taken on fantastic locations and I shot everything wide open. So I have taken portraits of my family members and one cannot even clearly tell where this photo was taken. It could have been taken in Vienna, in Prague, in Amsterdam, or in my mom's backyard. And in my opinion, a photo that's shot wide open just has this context missing. One doesn't clearly know where this photo was taken because everything in the background is blurry. And I think by adding context, you add an additional story, an additional layer into your photo that you didn't have before. Like for instance, where were you? What did the landscape look like? Or what was the weather like? And that's something that's often hard to tell if you shoot everything wide open. Alright, problem 2 that I encountered when shooting wide open was that I completely disregarded composition. So composition is essentially the way you allocate different elements in your scene for them to harmonize and hopefully support one main subject. But back in the days when I was shooting everything wide open, I was just looking for a strong subject and anything else in my composition was based on blur. I did not care about potential supporting elements. I did not care about distractions in the background. Why? Because it would be blurry anyway. And if shooting wide open is your style of photography, I'm not gonna be the one to stop you and just go on if that brings you fulfillment. And I don't want to step on anybody's feet here, but I could give my camera with my f1.4 lens to somebody who's never held a camera in their life, tell them where the shutter release button is, park the aperture at f1.4 and they will take great photos. So it doesn't really require a lot of skill to shoot wide open at f1.4. But I think if you want your photos to stand out, you should embrace composition. You should stop down your lens and see how you can engage different elements in your scene, remove distractions from your scene, and support your main subject. And the best photographers that you find online mostly shoot at stop-down apertures because it gives their compositions more layers and eventually also more impact. The next point I want to talk about is that shooting wide open will get you more blurry photos. Well, first of all, don't get me wrong. Autofocus on cameras have evolved and the best autofocusing systems on the market like the Sonys, the Canons, the Nikons, they all manage to keep your face in focus. And even my Fuji, shooting right now at f1.2 by the way, lol. Don't fail me Fujifilm. Okay, anyway, even at f1.2, modern camera systems can keep the subject in focus even at a very thin depth of field of just a few centimeters. I don't know how you go about composition, but the way I usually tackle composition is that I first find my composition and I just wait for my subject to pass by. So what I essentially do is I pre-focus my camera to where I anticipate my subject to show up at some point. But if I shoot wide open and I pre-focus on a specific point in my composition, there's actually not that much in focus. So I need to anticipate very, very well in order to make sure that my subject in general will actually be in that exact spot. And in many cases, it's actually probably not going to be that exact spot because it's coming by a little bit closer to the camera or a little bit further away from the camera, meaning that your scene will be out of focus. And by just stopping down your lens a bit, you can avoid these blurry images because your depth of field is much, much larger and your subject has some room to maneuver, going a little bit further away or a little bit closer to the camera and still remain in focus if you shoot at f4 or at f5.6, for instance. And the final problem related to shooting wide open is that your results will probably not be as crisp as if you had stopped down a stop or two. And yes, this is not the most relevant argument in my opinion, but lenses usually just tend to improve optically a little bit when you stop them down by usually a stop or two. Additionally, apart from sharpness, an optical defect you often find in bright apertured lenses at f1.2, at f1.4 or f1.8 is that they tend to suffer from chromatic aberrations. And you can remove these by stopping down your lens to, let's say, f4 or f5.6, where this is essentially a non-issue. All right. So these were my 4 points why I completely stopped shooting wide open, and they have had larger impacts on my photography in general. Well, first of all, by stopping down my lenses, I actually learned how to compose a scene, and over time, learning by doing, I managed to improve my composition, making them so much better, seeing how different elements in my scene interact with my main subject, making sure that my subject is supported by every element in my scene without distractions. Additionally, not shooting wide open anymore has also had impacts on the gear I use. For instance, I do not shoot on full frame anymore because the biggest advantage these sensors give me is that they allow me to blur out my background even more. But since I do not rely on blurry backgrounds anymore, I can easily shoot on the Fujifilm APS-C sensors that I use right now. And additionally, I can also use more compact lenses for these systems because I don't need to completely obliterate my background. Alright, that was it for today's video, and if you like what you saw today, please consider liking the video, and if you like the content I generally do on this channel, please consider also subscribing to the channel for weekly videos that hopefully make your photography improve. And with that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will hopefully see you next week. Bye.